We believe in happy, healthy, thriving, vibrant families, and the way that we accomplish that here at the Michigan Family Wellness Clinic is by working and helping one individual, one person at a time. Your health is your greatest asset, and especially as we have the seasons changing, a ton of people are coming in here at the clinic with allergies, with puffy eyes, with sinus drainages, with headaches, but especially with the temperature changes. Even though it may not seem like it today, the temperature is going to be dropping and we're going to be having those immune challenges. So that is our focus for this morning. We are doing a webinar all about the practical applications of what we can do naturally to figure out how to help boost our immune system in this exciting and empowering webinar, How Does the Immune System Work? My name is Dr. Kyle, and I welcome all of you guys to this online webinar. We do this every Thursday morning, and I just am so thankful and grateful that you guys are with us this morning. This is actually a combination of a Facebook Live and an Instagram Live. So what we're going to do is take a few moments, let people join on here, and we've got our presentation all set up. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Go ahead and chime in. We love those comments. We love that feedback because this is all about helping you guys. You know, that's what makes it so raw, so relevant, and so powerful is when we hear back from you guys. Your feedback is valuable because we truly do want to help the individuals in this great community. I'm going to take a few moments here and start the Instagram Live, and from there, we'll get started. All right, well, good morning, everyone who's joining us on the Instagram Live. I would encourage you, if you have Facebook and you can navigate to the Michigan Family Wellness Facebook group, you can actually, it's the Michigan Family Wellness Radio group, and then you'll be able to see all of the slides, all of the content that we're doing here for our How Does the Immune System Work webinar. So welcome again on Instagram. Jump on over here to Facebook if you want to see the actual immune slides, and we'll go ahead and get started from there. All right. So I believe our audio is good. I believe our video is good. I love this screen share option because that way you guys can see myself, you can hear my voice, but then you can also see this wonderful content and this great information that is so valuable and applicable for our lives here. That being said, let's go ahead and dive into our webinar this morning. How does the immune system work? So, okay, there are many, many components to our immune system, and what we're focusing on here is how we can strengthen and equip our immune systems to function at their highest potential, especially during these changing seasons, okay? So if you're the type of person, or if you're the type of family context where you're always reaching for that emergency, you know, the little things that you make the shakes with, if you're that type of person that's always reaching for the Sudafeds, the histamine blockers, the different things for our colds, the NyQuils, it's not that those things are inherently bad, but when we're always using those to just get through, to spend more time with our family, to be more productive at work, even just to get through the night, we want to be asking ourselves the question, what's really causing this, and how can we use our body's own strength, the power of our body's central nervous system to fight off these immune challenges and these infections and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and dive in. Again, real quick, we're not going to have time to go over everything, so I always want to mention the Michigan Family Wellness Podcast is the best way to learn more about everything we're talking about here this morning. There is an entire online audio library for your iPhone and your Android device, so I highly encourage you guys to check that out. Again, another disclaimer here by way of introduction. I have done hundreds and hundreds of hours in postgraduate studies, so it's a blessing and a curse that there's so much information out there. Dr. Google, the internet, all of those things. Do your own due diligence. Take the things that I say, definitely look them up and all of that, but I want you to know I have done my own due diligence in presenting this information, for gathering everything, and then providing it to you guys. All right, so let's go over the purpose of the immune system. I like to summarize it in 3 steps: to prevent, to punish, and to purify. All right, so let's go one by one. So to prevent is to keep the bad guys out. We're going to go into all of our barriers coming up here in a second. The second purpose is to punish, all right, to seek and to destroy, to identify those things that are not supposed to be there when they are actually in our context, in our body. All right, and the third is to purify. We need to flush out, we need to purge the mess and allow the good guys, or our good white blood cells, to flourish. Okay, so let's expand upon that. Here are the components of the immune system. Okay, so we have here on the left, we have our barriers. Okay, so we have our skin, our gut, even our brain has a blood-brain barrier. The lungs have a barrier as well, our sinuses, our hair, our saliva, tears, even blood. There's more in-depth information about specific people who are secretors. What are we saying here? Essentially, our bodies interface with our environment. Okay, so maybe some of you are teachers, all right? You're around kids all the time. Germs are all over the place. We're always interfacing with different people in our office environments, in our work environments. You know, we have the duct systems in our homes and in our workplaces. Our bodies are constantly being bombarded by everything around us in our environment. Okay, so our skin, our gut, those are the ways that primarily our bodies interface with our world around us. Okay, so more clarification on that. Even with our hair, our saliva, tears, there's all these things, and we want to support those naturally so that we can have good barriers. Because if we can keep the bad things out, then we don't have to work so hard to get rid of them in the first place. I kind of think of it like with borrowing money or debt. You know, you don't have to pay back what you don't borrow in the first place. So that's one analogy. Let's go over here onto our right side now and talk about the organs of the immune system. All right, so we have the liver, the spleen, the thymus, the tonsils. Our heart is even a immune organ because it's pumping our blood through our circulatory system. You have the adenoids, the appendix, the bone marrow, our microbiome, specifically our gut microbiome. We also have some lymphatic tissues, the galt and the malts. Not going to go into an in-depth discussion on those, but message me if you have more questions. And then a very important point here, our lymphatic system has what's called the cisterna chyli. Okay, so if there's one big idea you take away from our webinar this morning, I want you to remember the cisterna chyli. All right, it's kind of fun to say. Moving on, let's expand upon that. We're talking about 3 different systems here. We have the cardiovascular system, we have the lymphatic system, and then we're going to talk about the central nervous system. Okay, so most people would kind of understand that our heart is the pump for our blood, our cardiovascular system. So you see that here on the left. Okay, and then our lymphatic system, this is a diagram here on the right of the lymphatic system. Okay, as you can see, our lymphatic vessels are everywhere, much in the same way that our blood vessels and our capillaries are everywhere. It's continuous with all of our tissues. Okay, what I really want to drive home here is this collection of lymphatic vessels right down here in the lower part of our spine is called the cisterna chyli. So anatomically speaking, that's where it's located. All right. Now, if you were to compare where that is regionally or anatomically to the spine, it's right in front of our thoracolumbar junction. So not our mid-back, not our low back, but right in between. Okay, that's called the thoracolumbar. It's called in the profession the TL junction, the thoracolumbar junction. Not only is this a major innervation center for our adrenal glands, okay, so that's where our adrenal glands get signaled from, but it's also the location of our most powerful lymphatic pump, the cisterna chyli. So, can you imagine that if you have a subluxation, or if you have a misalignment or a segmental dysfunction of your spine in that area, you're not going to have good lymphatic flow, good lymphatic pumping, because that area of the lymphatic system is neurologically compromised. Okay, so let's further hash this out into a distribution, if you will. On the right side of our body, the right side of our face, our right arm, and the upper third, if you will, of our right thoracic cage is all filtered through what's called the right lymphatic duct. Okay, so it's kind of funny how this is distributed, if you will. Everything on the right side, from our waist up essentially, is going through that right lymphatic duct. Okay? And then everything from our left side of our body, including our left arm, the left side of our face, and both of our legs, both of our lower extremities, is filtering back through the left, or the thoracic duct, the left lymphatic duct there, okay? So it's kind of interesting the way we're designed, the way we're built together. I like to show these things because the lymphatic fluid, okay, once it's filtered through our lymph nodes, it does go back into circulation. So it goes back into our blood vessels and our veins, okay, and our arteries. So that's an important take-home point as well. Okay, so let's jump into a discussion of autoimmunity, okay? Temet nasce, for you Latin scholars out there, is know thyself. A major problem with our immune systems today is when our own immune system starts attacking our own tissue, okay? So under ideal circumstances, our immune system is supposed to identify something that's not there, that's not us, and then attack it and remove it, okay? That's the ideal. What we're seeing more and more and more of today with the rise of autoimmune conditions with molecular mimicry, what we're going to talk about in a minute here, is that our immune system is seeing, for example, our thyroid gland, our thyroid tissue, and it starts to attack that gland or that tissue. Okay, so it's almost like we're hurting ourselves from the inside out. So that's a major problem, that's a major deal, and that's why these practical applications, these natural conservative measures that we do here in the clinic are so powerful and so effective at helping this, because there's not a lot of answers in the medical community for these types of conditions. So let's jump into a discussion of molecular mimicry, okay? Of cross-reactivity is what it's often called in the literature, okay? So let's use gluten as an example because it's one of the most common examples. So again, we have an exposure of a protein, whether it be gluten or dairy or soy, whatever it might be, and our immune system sees that protein, okay? So it gets past our barriers, going back to our three things, to protect, to purify, and to purge, and all those things. It gets past our barriers, it's identified by our immune system, and then our immune system starts attacking that protein, okay? The problem is certain proteins, like gluten, look very similar to some protein tissues in our own body, okay? So as an example, again, gluten, so down here, chemically gluten protein resembles the protein structure of our thyroid and also of our cerebellum, okay? So that's why people that say they have their piece of Wonder Bread or they eat their sandwich and then they have trouble with their balance, okay? That's called gluten ataxia, okay? Or they have brain fog, chronic brain fog. Chronic brain fog is a result of this immune response from the exposure of foods that we're sensitive to, okay? What else do we have here? Okay, so even if you don't have the symptoms, you can still be having the immune response. The immune response, according to the literature, can last up to 6 months per exposure. So where are we now in September? So -6, so 3. So back in March, that bread that you had back in March, if you're sensitive, if you're reactive to it, could be affecting you today according to the literature here. All right, so let's just further zoom in on the cross-reactive amino acid sequences that support what we're saying. Okay, so on the top here, focus on the blue line for me for a moment. All right, this is our top half, this is our bottom half. On the top here, we have a cross-reactive amino acid sequence for gliadin, or part of the bread protein, gluten protein. And on the bottom here, we have the cross-reactive amino acid sequence for our cerebellum. As you can see, there are 4 similarities between the gliadin protein and the protein of our brain, our cerebellum. Okay, so that's why, this is the reason why we have brain fog or gluten ataxia when we have the exposure to those breads, those baguettes, those muffins, those bagels, all the things we love, right? Now, it's very interesting. We often see our patients tell us when they travel overseas, Europe, for example, and they have those same breads, those same baguettes and everything, because they don't use genetically modified organisms over there in Europe, they don't have the same symptoms. So their symptoms go away when they're traveling, and when they come back to the States here, and then they start eating the food here, everything returns. So very interesting. Let's dive into a quick discussion on the bottom half here. We have our myelin basic protein and our streptococcus amino acid sequences, okay? Myelin basic protein. So have you heard of multiple sclerosis, all right? The tissue, not the tissue, the protein that covers our nerves is called myelin, okay? It is a fatty tissue, all right? And this is the amino acid sequence for myelin, okay, that covers all of our nerves, okay? This is the protein that is compromised in multiple sclerosis, all right? Below you have the amino acid sequence for a streptococcus, the bacteria, okay? So this is a plausible mechanism. What I'm not saying is that every case of MS is caused by a chronic underlying streptococcus infection, but what I am saying is that this is a plausible mechanism for chronic unresolved multiple sclerosis, is this underlying infection that's just undetected. So someone is having all of the symptoms of MS, okay, sensitivity to heat, the brain fog, the digestive issues, the balance issues, the motor coordination, everything, okay? They may have, it's plausible, a chronic underlying streptococcus infection. Again, one of the great reasons to boost their immune system, okay? So that would mean the immune system is not only attacking the strep infection, but it's also attacking that person's myelin basic protein. All right, so we got that under wraps there. Moving right along to a basic discussion of immunology. I'm going to kind of move quicker here because this gets a little bit more in depth. The plasma cells down here on the bottom left are the cells that mature into our antibodies, okay? So a great way to remember our antibodies is the acronym GAMED, or G-A-M-E-D. So we have our IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE, and IgD. Okay, so those are our often first-line defenses, are those antibodies. In terms of hypersensitivity, IgE is a type 1 hypersensitivity classification there. All right, so to further dive into our discussion here with the immune system, we have these major 2 divisions, if you will. There's Th1 versus Th2. Th stands for T helper cells, okay? So what you're looking at is basically a diagram here of different types of immunocompromised conditions. So on the left, everything here has to deal with Th1 autoimmunity. All right, so you have your Hashimoto's thyroiditis, your type 1 diabetes, your multiple sclerosis, like we talked about earlier, and your chronic viral infections, okay? On your lab results, you're going to notice this is how you tell, okay? This is how you identify Th1 autoimmunity. You're going to have elevated interleukin-2s, your interleukin-12s, your TNF-alphas, your natural killer cells, and your cytotoxic T cells, okay? So you can look at those things on blood work on your lab tests. All right, over here on the right side, you're going to see lupus or SLE, you're going to see dermatitis, asthma, and chemical sensitivities. This is identified on lab results by oftentimes a parasite infection, interleukin 4, interleukin 13, interleukin 10, and B cells tag antigen. Okay? So again, don't get hung up on the lab results. That's what my job is here at the clinic, is to order those labs to identify those specificities. But if you're having brain fog, if you're having swollen glands, if you struggle with inflammation in any part of the body, hair loss, changes in weight, extreme fatigue, shortness of breath or palpitations, joint and muscle pain, just chronic weakness all over, these are beginning symptoms, if not chronic symptoms, of underlying autoimmune conditions that can be so powerfully helped by the natural things that we're going to talk about here. Before we enter into a discussion of the relationship between the immune system and our microbiome, we have to talk about where our microbiome comes from. Okay? So, our microbiome comes from, if you're not familiar, from traveling down the birth canal when we're born. Okay? That's where we get our microbiome, all of the good bacteria, the bugs in our gut. Okay? It's very interesting to see how the rising rates of cesarean section or C-section seem to correlate with a lot of the childhood, the young, adolescent diseases that we're seeing. I'm not saying there's causation, but it's interesting to look, if you track both of them over time, if I do it this way, there seems to be a correlation. Okay? We have so many mothers delivering via cesarean section, and I'm glad we have those interventions, don't get me wrong, but we need to focus on supporting these women, supporting mothers, supporting expecting women, expecting mothers, and encouraging them to do the natural methods, because it's honestly the healthier option for both mother and baby. Now, that being said, again, I'm glad we have the interventions, I'm glad we have the epidural, the Tosin, we save lives. That's completely legitimate. But when a baby is extracted from the mother via cesarean section and all these types of things, we don't get that seeding of the microbiome. So I highly encourage you guys to check out, there's a YouTube video called The Invisible Universe. This is from an NPR production, and there's a great TED Talk here on the left where they talk about the mind-altering microbes, how our microbiome, our gut, affects our brain as well, along with our immune system. All right? Here's a more in-depth discussion of different specific probiotics and prebiotics and how they support the immune system. Again, too much to really dive into here and to go over, but this really illustrates how it's very important to have a specific genus, species, and strain to your probiotic. The probiotics that you get from the Walmarts, the GNCs, again, they're better than nothing. Like, I'd rather have people do something rather than nothing. But we can do so much more clinically when it comes to supporting people with probiotic supplements, with nutritional medicine, to specifically support their immune system and different gut conditions that may be going on. Again, don't have time to dive into everything here, but I can't advocate enough for breastfeeding. Okay, there are specific sugars that have been identified in breast milk that support the immune system. Okay, these are called human milk oligosaccharides. So I will post these videos in the event page on our Facebook group here if you guys are interested in checking these out. Very, very, very important to support with breast milk. And even if you're unable to nurse and to breastfeed, because I know there's a lot that goes in with that, it's very emotionally challenging as well. There are all sorts of donor banks. There are all sorts of people. Tap into your community. There are people out there who have an overproduction or a surplus of this vital nutrient, breast milk, and they are more than happy to help you to support the health of your kids, of your newborn, or of your baby. Again, let's talk more about how stress impacts our immune system here as well. Okay? So if we constantly have the hormone cortisol being pumped out by our adrenal glands, that's a recipe for immune disaster. Okay? A little bit is okay. When it's constant and chronic, it's just too much. All right? So I often educate people on what's called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA axis. This is the mechanism that we are affecting and that we are fine-tuning with our artful spinal chiropractic adjustments. Okay? So not only do we have signaling from the adrenal glands via the central nervous system, but a lot of this is brain-based as well. So if we're not sleeping, if we don't have good cognitive function, if we don't have good cognitive signaling, we're not going to have a healthy stress response because our adrenals are going to get confused. So that's the whole purpose of that discussion. I would be remiss if I did not at least mention Echinacea. So I want to give you guys two sort of practical applications here. Echinacea is one of the most powerful herbs that we have been given to support our immune system. Specifically, all of our plants, the plant material that we grow, the food that we grow here in the U.S., most of it, if it's not organic, it's sprayed with Roundup, with the chemical glyphosate. Okay? What we've learned about Echinacea is that Echinacea produces its own anti-pesticide. It's like an anti-Roundup, but it already produces it on its own. Okay, so we could do an entire webinar just on Echinacea, but I wanted to mention that for you guys because if there's one thing that you could do to support yourself, honestly, year-round, but especially in those acute stages where you're not feeling well, taking Echinacea is a great place to start. The second thing I do want to mention is a formulation called Congo Plex. This is manufactured by Standard Process, and I love using this preparation because it's great for that quick fix. People often our lives are stressful. We don't have time to be sick, right? So that's why specifically boosting our white blood cells, our immature, immortalized T cells, that's what Congo Plex is supporting. All right, so high dose Congo Plex, specifically in those acute stages. This is one thing that I do very frequently if I start to feel sick, but I don't often do because I get well adjusted. I stay well adjusted. But this is a great place to start. This is a natural way rather than reaching for the Emergen-Cs, the Zyrtex, all of the over-the-counter things that can have some extra chemicals in there that aren't the best for our bodies. All right. More videos that I will post in the event page as well. We don't have the time to go into them, but they are great educational tools. I love the kids here. As the saying goes, you know, from the mouths of babes. Sometimes we do need to hear it from the kids to have it really set in because this stuff is so powerful, it is so simple, but we just have to do it. All right, so let's summarize some practical applications here. So, of course, staying well adjusted. If you have that sore throat, if you feel that fever coming on, if you're struggling with chronic fatigue and energy, chiropractic adjustments, specifically artful chiropractic adjustments, can be one of the best ways to boost your immune system, to increase the lymphatic flow and drainage of your entire body, and unlock the innate immunity of your body itself. Again, we talked about the cisterna chyli, okay, so really have that be a take-home point for today. Trace minerals, zinc, magnesium, selenium, okay, vitamin C, very important. We talked about Echinacea. We must reduce our stress levels and get plenty of rest. Very important. So message me if you're not sleeping. Remove inflammatory foods. Okay, so gluten-free as much as you can, dairy-free, soy-free. Really try to eat well. Eat a very anti-inflammatory diet. Probiotics. Okay, we talked about how the probiotics play into the immune system. Many of our neurotransmitters are made and manufactured in our gut. So we have to have a good diversity of our microbiome. Human milk oligosaccharides, or HMOs, very important to use as a clinical tool to support the immune system. Lymphatic support and manual techniques. So oftentimes if I have a patient with immune challenges after their adjustments, we'll actually do a lot of the manual techniques to help the drainage of the sinuses, of the head, of the lymphatic vessels in the neck. Epsom salt soaks, probably one of the most cost-effective techniques out there. Not only very good for our muscles and our tissues, but also very good to help get some more magnesium into our bodies to support our immune system. And one of my favorites, find your favorite organic immune tea or immune boosting tea and mix a little honey with that. Honey is one of the great, it's not only a sugar, there's also amino acids in there, but it is a great way to give yourself a little bit of energy and support your immune system naturally that way. That being said, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the Facebook Live this morning. And whether, if you're even watching the replay, thank you as well. I highly encourage you guys, as we said at the top, for your iPhone, for your Android, check out the Michigan Family Wellness Podcast and learn more about the entire culture that we're building here, the family wellness community. And with that, message me, like I said, post your questions underneath in the comments for this video. I want to thank everyone for staying with us this morning. And we're going to sign off here on Facebook. We're going to sign off here on Instagram. And I will see you guys next week for our next Thursday morning Facebook Live webinar. Thank you so much. Have a great day.